You're watching the RunFoot YouTube channel. I'm Finlay, and this episode is a review of the brand new HOKA Clifton 10 running shoes. HOKA supplied RunFoot with a pair for testing, so we're going to talk through the updates, how they feel to run in, and what this model is best suited to. Hope you enjoy. Let's start with the updates to the Clifton 10 running shoes then. While the midsole is still a compression molded EVA, the heel has 3mm extra cushioning in comparison to the previous version. And because the forefoot hasn't been adjusted, that means the drop has increased from 5mm to 8mm. The adjusted midsole geometry is also designed to deliver smoother transitions from landing through to takeoff. And as a recap, HOKA's meta rocker geometry simply means that the bottom of the midsole is curved from heel to toe. And if you think about a wheel, the midsole is then designed to help roll your feet forward, and that can help alleviate some of the stress on the working muscles, particularly in the lower leg area. The Clifton 10 also offers slightly more support. Now, you may not be able to see it that well on the camera, but these sections here in the midsole, they rise up slightly, and that essentially cradles your feet. Your foot sits down into that foam. HOKA refer to this as a rear foot focused active foot frame. And while the Clifton 10 are neutral running shoes, this midsole geometry does increase the inherent stability of the midsole, and it does offer a little bit more support and a little bit more structure for your feet and ankles, particularly those of you who land in the heel area. Looking at the outsole now, it is the same material as the previous model. And we might be wrong, but comparing the Clifton 10 with the Clifton 9, we think there's slightly more outsole coverage on the lateral edge at the heel area. And that's particularly beneficial for heel strikers in terms of how long will the Clifton last, because this is a part of the midsole which will break down very quickly if there's not enough coverage there. And yes, adding rubber to the bottom of the shoe adds some weight. We might be wrong as well. There might not be more there, but we think that there is a little bit more structure there, and that's going to be hopefully really beneficial. And when you couple that with the 3mm extra stack height in the heel, hopefully the Clifton 10 will also last a little bit longer than the Clifton 9 running shoes. The upper has changed from a knit material to a jacquard knit material, and all you really need to know about that is it's a more premium material. So previous wearers of the Clifton should hopefully just experience improved comfort on the top of their feet. Now, HOKA has also stated that the new upper offers an improved fit in the forefoot and an improved fit in the heel. But the particular one to focus on is the improved forefoot fit. And that's because previous versions of the Clifton have tended to be a little bit narrower than what the norm is in comparable models. As we've just talked about the upper, it makes sense to talk about the fit. And the good news is the forefoot does offer a slightly more accommodating fit, and it does feel slightly more spacious. So what that means is it should suit a slightly greater proportion of runners. There are some runners out there who have maybe tried the Clifton in the past and have felt it's been a little bit too narrow, and that's sometimes because they feel the sides of the midsole walls rising up around the feet. And obviously you can opt for the wide fit option in the Clifton style if you want a little bit more space, but I think this model is going to suit slightly more runners, feel a little bit more spacious there. It's certainly not overly wide, it's just more accommodating. And at the same time, if you have or already are wearing the Clifton and you like the fit of it, it'd be very unlikely that you don't like the fit of this. You're not suddenly going to feel like there's lots more space in the forefoot there. Now, when it comes to the heel counter, didn't really notice a huge difference in terms of the fit there. It feels very similar. And what's good is we still have this tapered back heel collar design, which makes it easier to slip the Clifton on and off. A lot of people wear this model for walking around in, particularly because they've been recommended it by a podiatrist due to irritations in the feet, such as plantar fascia pain, because going back to that rocker geometry, that rolling forward mechanism that the midsole offers can really help alleviate the stress on tissues such as your plantar fascia. So it's really beneficial that you can still get your feet in and out of these with relative ease. Now, an important point with the sizing, if you have not run in HOKA running shoes before and you're considering opting for the Clifton 10, is to look at your sizing, because HOKA converts their US to UK sizing a little bit differently to what's considered the norm. So the men's US to UK size is only converted by half a size, and the women's US to UK size is only converted by 1.5 sizes. And why I say only is what's considered the norm is usually a full size difference for the men's US to UK, and then 2 full sizes for the women's US to UK. So for example, I'm a 10.5 pretty much in most brands, and that equates to an 11.5 US in most brands. So if I went for a 10.5 in these, that would be an 11 US, and they would definitely be too small. So I opt for an 11 UK in these, which is then an 11.5 US. So you're always picking by that US size, and that's really our advice if you're thinking about HOKA running shoes, is do look at the US sizing as opposed to the UK sizing and try and match those up. Onto the midsole foam then. Now, the midsole foam should be the same. However, it's fair to say that the way the Clifton midsoles have felt over the past few models has varied a bit from shoe to shoe, in that one can be slightly softer, one can be slightly firmer. And this midsole feels very protective, it's very well cushioned, but it does sit on the slightly more responsive end of the cushioning scale. And I would say it feels slightly firmer, slightly more responsive than the previous version. Is the extra cushioning in the heel a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it is noticeable, and that's because it offers more protection. The slight downside of that is it does feel a little bit heavier underfoot, and the Clifton 10 running shoes are heavier than the previous version. So this results in a slightly less agile underfoot feel. However, the upside is it really helps smooth out the transitions from landing through to takeoff. It is quite exceptional how fluid those transitions feel, and that delivers a lot of comfort for everyday miles. This means the cushioning is really well suited to those steady state runs at easy to moderate paces when you just want to forget about your feet and legs and settle into a nice rhythm. And naturally, this cushioning should also suit runners who enjoy a slightly more responsive underfoot ride. And while I've just mentioned that this should be great for those steady state runs, and also before that the midsole might feel slightly less agile than the previous version, it still copes really well with injections of pace. There is still really good energy return on offer from the cushioning. So if you do decide to pick up the pace at any point of your run, then you should be really confident that the cushioning should still feel very good when you do that. On the other hand, if you're looking for a softer underfoot experience, then you probably want to consider the HOKA Bondi 9 running shoes, and that's because the super critical midsole foam in the Bondi offers a much softer and bouncier underfoot experience than the compression molded EVA foam in the Clifton 10 running shoes. And why we're saying that is, if you buy the Clifton 10 with the expectation that they're going to feel ultra plush and really soft under your feet, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed. That's just not what this shoe offers. But we actually think that's a good thing, and it's great there's a really clear point of difference between the Clifton and the Bondi running shoes, because everybody's different. While some runners might like a soft underfoot feel, other runners might prefer a responsive feel, but it also means there could be a place for both options in your shoe rotation. For example, the softer, bouncier nature of the Bondi 9 running shoes makes it a perfect option for those long distance runs and the recovery days that follow the higher intensity sessions. And then for everything else, those everyday miles at slow to steady paces, that's where the slightly more responsive nature of the Clifton should feel really comfortable. And just to say, due to the popularity of our previous Bondi versus Clifton episode, we are going to do a more in-depth comparison episode that talks through the differences between the new Bondi and the new Clifton. So overall, there's no doubt the Clifton 10 running shoes aren't going to suit a lot of runners. These are brilliant everyday mileage running shoes, and previous wearers should be able to transition into the new model with ease. We'll need to do more testing, but going back to the point on durability with the slight increase in weight, what we think is a little bit more outsole coverage and the extra 3mm of cushioning in the heel, the Clifton has previously lacked the durability that you maybe need or expect from an everyday mileage running shoe. So while yes, the weight has increased slightly, hopefully the Clifton 10 running shoes are going to offer even more durability than previous editions, which is a great attribute to talk about. We also think it's really important that these are very true to the original DNA of the Clifton and haven't become overly soft, and the midsole hasn't become ultra stacked, because that's the way a lot of running shoes are going. They're becoming softer, the midsole stacks are becoming thicker and thicker. And while there is very much a place for those, some runners love doing all their running in them, some runners enjoy doing some runs in them, there are a proportion of runners who don't like that ultra high stacked feel, or do want a more responsive, more connected ride for their everyday runs. And that is really what the Clifton 10 running shoes deliver. You get a lot of protection and comfort for those easy miles, but you also feel like the shoe is very much part of your feet. And that brings me to the end of this HOKA Clifton 10 running shoe review. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. As always, if you have any questions, please comment on this episode and we'll try our best to get back to you as soon as we can. And as mentioned, stay tuned for the Bondi versus Clifton episode.